Welcome to Coach of the Coach. I'm your host, Coach KP, and unfortunately, I feel like I'm lost. The guy who stands by my side can't be with us today, JC Glick. But never fear, he's with us in heart, he's with us in spirit. And as always, don't forget, go buy his books. He's got some great books out there. Meditations of an Army Ranger is one of the best books that I've read in quite some time. And, he's dearly missed, but he's kicking ass, taking names. And the good news is we got an awesome guest today. He's a friend of mine. He's in a very short period in my life, he taught me one of the best lessons that I learned in who I am as a human being and what I was doing at that time in my life. And he probably doesn't even know this, but, I'll give him props when it's time. I don't want to burst his bubble too heavily right away. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, with us today is one of the greatest tacticians when it comes to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. His name is Phil Migliarese. Phil, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You got it. Now, I said that you are one of the greatest tacticians in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Obviously, that's my personal opinion, but you have more than enough.
Man, there's so many great people out there. Anybody that claims they have everything.
Right. But the fact of the matter is, look, you're hysterical, you're funny, but you're also pretty darn humble too. But truthfully, I mean, you've accomplished so much in a very short period in your life. And you have the awards and the accolades, you have the followers, you have the teammates, you've built a tribe around you basically. And in doing so, you have become incredibly successful in the world of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But when did this all start for you? Like, when did you really get into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and how did you walk the path that you walked at such an early age?
Well, even before Jiu-Jitsu, even before I knew it, I grew up in a family where, going back to my great-grandfather, they were boxers and what they called gentlemen's fighting on the street, where you see the guys like this.
Right. Jack Dempsey style.
Yeah. No, really. My great-grandfather was from Italy. He fought there. Then he came to the States and fought a little bit here. And they were rough, tough people. I never met my great-grandfather, but obviously my grandfather and my dad. We started boxing. I say we, my brother Ricardo and I, we started boxing when we were little kids, man, 3, 4, and for Christmas we didn't get toys, we got boxing gloves. So we understood the idea of strikes and movement, which is great. That's what boxing is the best for that. When I was about 11, my cousin and I, he was also like martial artist boxer. My cousin, we got the Gracie in action tape. And that was so early, 1988. I was a little kid, 11 years old, but I was excited about martial arts and kicking and punching. And, at that time, Jean-Claude Van Damme was my hero, high kick.
Right.
So we got that, and we mimicked what we saw on the tapes with takedowns, because I never saw anyone slip a punch, fire in there, take him down the ground, take the person out within a minute, and I'm like, I like the idea of within a minute. So I was just amazed. So you go back to technique. I've always been fascinated with techniques. Part of my background too is I've always liked computers. So I've always been into yoga since I was about 8, computers, anything computer based, and jiu-jitsu fighting. So those are my major things for the last, I'm 44 now, so I'll be turning 44. So since I was a child, 8 years old. So each of those things I like to break down in a technical way. So, yoga by form and alignment, jiu-jitsu timing and proper technique for a particular set of, however someone's positioned. And then the computer work, which has evolved incredibly, but, you have to do everything right. You have to be technical when you're building a computer or when you're programming software or whatever. So they're all kind of the same to me. And so I was fascinated
Now,
by the technique.
when you, right. And when you first got into this, let's just say around the age of 11,
Mm-hmm.
because you were doing things before that and so forth, but you really started understanding it and got exposed to it at 11.
Right.
You were quick to go to the Gracie camp relatively soon afterwards. What, within 2 years or something like that?
No, I remember I was 11. So a lot of people make a mistake. They also called me Hoist Gracie's training partner for the UFC, where by the time the UFC was around, I was only 16 or 17 years old. There's
Right.
no 16-year-old that's training with Hoist Gracie at his, top. I trained with him, yeah, and I think he was nice to me. But it was after that I could push it a little bit more. I mean, he was awesome. So I was 11 and I trained in Philadelphia. So when I was 17, which also coincides with a car accident I was in, real major one.
You were in a coma, correct?
It was a couple-day thing. I wasn't in a year coma like you would see in some movies.
Right. Still.
It was a couple days I was down, and but it was significant, man. I had some brain trauma and some bad stuff.
Which is why you are the way you are today.
Why weird?
The brain trauma got you going.
Where am I? No, yeah, so 11 to 17, I trained in Philly. So I did as many of the tournaments that were around, that were local, and learned as much as I could. And we had the luxury of the Gracies coming to us. So that was the big thing. I didn't travel because I was a little kid. I'm not going to get on a plane and travel at 11, unless I was with my family or something. But 17, I jumped on that plane, went to the Gracie Academy. Just figured it out. I was a blue belt. Because I did another podcast the other day, and I was unsure of I don't know if you can see behind me all these belts.
Oh, yeah.
The blue here, and
Right.
I think above it, that's a purple belt. This thing looks like the white belt.
Right.
I was there the longest. I was there 7 years, and then fifth degree black belt.
Wow.
So now I'm 6th degree, and then after that, it's a red black belt in 10 plus years.
Right.
So, but my point, so at that point, I didn't travel until I was 17, and I did not stop traveling. I slowed down about 4 years ago after I had my daughter. But before that, I was probably every week to every other week teaching a seminar somewhere on the planet. So,
Right.
But motivated by technique, it's still evolving. So it's amazing.
Yeah, and that's what today's show is all about. It's about technique. And granted, you are a practitioner in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but at the end of the day, no matter who we are as parents, who we are as coaches, who we are as professionals in the business workforce, technique is everything. I remember a coach growing up. I played football in South Jersey at Cherokee High School, and one of my defensive backs coaches, he's one of the greatest guys I've ever met. His name's Gene Shulman, and he instilled in me, Kerry, take care of the little things, and the big things will take care of yourself. And every time I hear the word technique, I see Gene Shulman in my brain saying those exact words to me. It's the little things. Take care of the little things. The big things will take care of themselves. Now, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which I've done combatives for quite some time. I've done some Sambo and I've done some BJJ and so forth. I know just one mild little turn of a wrist or an arm is what either allows somebody to escape from a hold or make somebody tap out in a hold.
Or a pause.
Correct.
That happened to me the other day in training. I was working with someone. My training is playful these days. I'm not trying to kill anybody, but if you make a mistake, I'll capitalize, but I can do it in a way that no one's getting hurt. But there was a pause on one of my guys. He's very excited about escalating his, training. He's also, like I said, I'm 44. He's 20-something years old, beast, big kid. But he paused at a certain point, and I went, boop, and I locked in my weight, and that was it. That was done. So a pause. He needed to move. There was a time to move, and he lost that time. So it was interesting to me because we talked about it after. we talked about that. It was just right there where you lost it, you know, and I helped him. Next time he'll move with me, he'll be better, and level goes up.
Right.
My level goes down. 50 years old, I'm going to keep going.
Absolutely. And when we talk about technique, we're also talking about execution, proper execution. And execution is a timed event.
Mm-hmm.
We have to ensure that when we execute, in order to be successful in that execution of that technique, by the way, it is timed during a period of an event that allows us to capitalize on the movement most.
Yeah, within an arena, like tournament 5 minutes, tournament 10 minutes, just in the academy. So that has to be defined. What's the arena?
Right. And a few days ago, I saw on your Facebook page, you asked an interesting question, and it pertains to coaching, really. It was something in the vein of, what do you believe a new student should obtain for their first lesson?
First move.
First move, right?
First move. Lesson 1, move 1.
Right. And I saw Matt Larson, who I know of pretty well because of the U.S. Army Combatives program that he helped create. And he wrote a really good post, comment underneath. And so did Adam, what was Adam's last name? Adam Skoll, Adam Schultz.
Yeah.
And he responded, and then I responded. And I agreed with both of them. And in a sense, they both came about and said, you know, it's about making it fun. It's about making it understandable. It has to be learning and so forth. And I said, I think the very first lesson, quote unquote, should be a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
The conversation unfolds with, what are you trying to gain out of this? What is your intent in being here? And by the way, as the person who is instructing you and coaching you, mentoring you, your insight is going to provide me with the wisdom I need in order to fulfill your aspirations and goals and desires.
We actually do that before they step on the mat. So we have questionnaires. It's a very my studios. I wanted to mirror the way I grew up. So I grew up in a very like social, hi, how you doing? How can we help you? Sort of, you know, my whole family was like that, in like customer service, let's say. And we cover those things. Like, what specifically would you like to get out of your martial arts experience is one of the questions. And that just leads into all this, you know, all these other things. So we have an idea where to place these people, because everyone's different. You know, someone with military experience, and then maybe the combatives, maybe we'll place them somewhere else. Maybe we'll do like intermediate and basics, you know. Some people have been training 20 years. We're not going to put them in basics class. So
right. And that's actually how I met you. I was stationed at Fort Dix. I was working in the Phoenix Raven program as an instructor, where we do a modified version of combatives, a lot of the ASP techniques.
Actually all the programs are right behind me in my.
Oh, really?
I have all the D manuals. I helped on a lot of them unofficially.
Yeah.
That's actually how I know Matt from the Gracie Academy, from teaching what was called grapple at the time, and it was then modified to suit the Army combatives. So he was the first one.
Yeah, and when I went to combatives at level 1, that was the very first thing they did. Mm-hmm. It was, they sat us all down and we had a conversation. When I first met you, it was one-on-one in your studio, not far from the train station across the river in Philly. And you know, you sat down and you said, what do you want out of this? And I was very upfront with you. Look, I'm not into it for a belt. I don't care about a belt. I'm into it because I'm an instructor for the U.S. military, and there's a very good potential that what I teach could be life or death for these guys. Yeah. And you were very open to that. You were very willing to work with me with my needs, knowing that it wasn't just for my own self-edification of learning new thing. And I know you've done that for police officers as well. You've done it for other military members as well.
Later on today.
Right.
And 4 guys coming to me, like higher up law enforcement, that want to put a little bit more jiu-jitsu and what we call in the way I'm different than the Gracies is that we do this thing called intelligent striking. Striking when you have to, striking when it's important, and especially in teamwork, like grappling wastes time.
Sure.
Yeah. So I hope it takes today. So I'm doing like a little presentation later this afternoon.
Nice. But the reason why I bring all this up is you as a coach, right? You have been really, in my opinion, I think you succeeded so well in what you do because you understood your student needs, your athletes' needs.
Right.
And you didn't stick to one game plan throughout your journey as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
You were able to understand your athletes, your subordinates, whatever you want to call them, and you were able to work within their mindsets and expand their minds at the same time. And I think no matter what the sport is, a good coach is going to do that. I remember I interviewed for a high school football job up here where I live now. And in the interview, they asked me, they said, well, what type of offense are you going to run? And I flat out told them, I said, well, I don't know yet. Well, what do you mean you don't know? Well, I haven't even assessed the team, let alone the individuals, for their own capabilities. You can't just create a program because you're the coach and you say, this is the program we have to do. A good coach is more of a facilitator who's going to work within the capabilities of those athletes. And they're also going to assess, the coach is going to assess those individuals and say, you know what, I think this kid can do more. So I'm going to expose them to something a little bit different and just do another assessment. You constantly assess people.
Yeah.
So when it comes to technique and assessing the individuals, how do you stress? And again, we're not just talking about football. We're not just talking about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's anything.
Mm-hmm.
When you make that initial assessment, how do you stress the importance of the most minor movement, whether it be the mind, body, soul, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
physical? How do you stress that, and how do you get your student to best understand the importance and the criticality behind that technique?
With just a regular jiu-jitsu class with civilians, it's easy because I've found that with military and law enforcement, I do it. I physically will do it to you. I'm like, here's why it worked. Bang, throw you to the floor, whatever. But just demonstrating the subtleties of a move, this is with the piece and this is without the piece. And they feel it, how much power and effort you have to put in without the little techniques, whatever it may be. And I say, try this little piece. It'll save you some time and energy. And it's slightly amazing every time you do it, especially the most basic techniques. I don't like saying basic, like the fundamental techniques, because it doesn't matter what belt you are, that you need the fundamentals anytime you train. So demonstrating on them, let's say it's an arm bar, just like, Americana arm bar, let's say. If your arm's a little bit stretched out, you don't feel as much, but you get it here, you lift it up, elbow to shoulder, and crack. They feel the subtleties and they demonstrate the subtleties. It clicks, for most people. And
Sure.
There are people that are more excitable in class and they have to come to the middle, but you have the other people too passive. They have to come up to the middle too. I'm saying physically. So you can like hold something and let it fall out of your hand, or, someone's holding too hard. So we have to find, that balance between
The happy.
Yeah, the happy medium there, because you can burn yourself out. There's that too. So to teach the subtleties, I actually get in there and do it. I find it's the best way just to make them do it and not talk about it much,
Okay.
And my whole program is based around talk as little as possible. When you open your mouth, make it important, and keep the class moving. So
Sure.
I always, like classes are part entertainment, part, badass moves. It is. You have to have a leader and someone that's like, we don't listen to monotone. We don't respect monotone.
Right.
So you have someone who's energetic about the subject, man. That's another detail. So I always say I would rather hire a great blue belt that understands the basic curriculum than a black belt that can beat everyone's butt. In a
Right.
heartbeat, I will. I will trade them in a second.
And I was training for a
I
while
can make
under
them a
Mark.
black belt.
I was training for a while under Marco Perazzo based off of your recommendation because he was closer to where I was living at the time. And I believe when I first started working with him, he was only a blue belt, if I'm not mistaken. No, he was probably a
A long
brown,
time ago, so maybe blue, purple belt. Yeah.
something like that. But yeah, I get it. And so recently I saw something, and I don't know if it transpires to what you do when you're teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but a coach in the NFL made a comment about we have to go back to the basics because their technique for tackling is heinous in the NFL. And unfortunately, little kids watch NFL. They play Madden on their little, kind of games, and they see these poor fundamentals and poor techniques, and they think they could, do it on the field themselves. And one, that creates injury. Two, it creates mistakes.
Yeah, we have that.
Yeah, and so what the coach did is he actually had a couple of his players. These are professional athletes now.
Yeah.
And he said, we're going to start with our stance. And he made these guys all go back into a regular stance. And he was like, well, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And I was flabbergasted at professional athletes and this coach pointing out this is not proper. And it was just straightened off with his stance. So, and the film that I saw was from a while ago. It wasn't a recent film. I just saw it on YouTube not long ago. But my question to you is, when you're teaching, especially your higher belt students, do you ever go back and say, hey, guys, today we're taking a pause.
Well,
we're going back again so we never lose it.
Right. Yeah, if it's a higher level class, right? They can feel their own mistakes generally, and it's my job just to point it out and move along. But they, because I'm going to move along to something that's more fun to them. Let's say, like some crazy new move or a hardened, trained, old move, which is like I asked a question on my Facebook page: are you more old school or new school jiu-jitsu? New school, like I don't even know the proper definitions, but people are flipping upside down, taking backs and choking people, which is awesome. I can't teach that to my, 55-year-old new students that are just getting started, but doesn't mean they can't do it later. So I implement it in the advanced classes. I'll say, let's just say hip scooting, stepping on the floor, the proper way to slide your hip. I just did this. And I made the emphasis on how your foot should land on the floor, the ball of the foot instead of the heel. And then I was talking about sliding your hips sideways, your hip points like this, not like this. That's power. This is technique. So I touched on it for 5 minutes. 3 of my black belts came up after, like, yo, thanks so much. I have it on this side, but I don't have it on my other side. So I trained it on my other side. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
there's only a certain amount of time in the world here. And we only have a certain amount of time on the mat to master whatever it may be. So everyone can gain mastery in a certain area of jiu-jitsu, like life. But we also, it's impossible to get it all. I mean, no Gracie, no world champion, no, super instructor has every piece. That's the importance of the connection of what we're doing here, online sort of discussions. YouTube is great and it's terrible at the same time because you can see a move, but you don't know where it fits yet. So that's where it takes expertise to take that move. That's good, but you have to also know this, this, and this, just in case you mess it up. That's what people don't know. It's not like structured within a system. And then there are other parts and other videos that are structured within systems, and I think they're way better. So
are we self-promoting your videos that you did on I'm just kidding.
No, all mine are free. It doesn't matter. I don't want to promote anything. I don't want to have to do them all. So no, but my point is yeah, you can see all that stuff on YouTube. That's my point. My brother's the one that's really, past couple of years we've been doing a little bit of building some real estate stuff. So I've had I train just as much, but I'm teaching a little bit less and traveling a lot less. And we're kind of done with that now. But since we started that, my brother has been teaching the world on Instagram. He loves it. So, you know, little short clips. He has some great techniques. One of the best instructors around for sure. And so that's one form of learning is, you know, visualization from what you see on the internet. But like I said, putting it together, finding, you know, where it fits, that's the tricky part sometimes.
Sure, sure. So now I want to move on because I don't want to skip out on this.
Yeah, I wanted to say one thing on the technique stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't just go from me to my students. My instructor comes and he'll, even though I do it right, even though, because we had it on video one day and I held correctly, I did it. He made an effort to point out, hey, make sure you're doing this, teaching this. Helson Gracie, he's the, you know, in my opinion, one of the top Gracies, not just toughness, but technical side, man. Wow. All his brothers will tell you too, like he does not make mistakes in that regard. You know, his dad's book, you can flip through it by memory and just do it to show you everything. So when we review the core of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, we, you know, like I said, even if I do it right, he'll be like, stop, make sure you're doing this, make sure, and we make mistakes too in his eyes. So that it's, you know, we listen because it'll trickle down to our students. And, and it's our connection still too. It's like, he's my instructor, he's my brother's instructor. And for the, you know, Gracie core side, I mean, he's the man.
Well, and he's doing exactly what we're trying to do here is he's coaching the coach.
Coaching the coach.
You know, and we often make this false assumption that the coach is always right, that the coach always knows what they're talking about, when in reality, a lot of times, especially in a lot of high school sports now, what you're finding is coaches and schools are hiring sport analysts, where the analyst is working alongside the coach and staff, where they're studying the film, they're studying all their tapes, you know, and so forth from the games earlier. And they're saying, well, hey, coach, this is where you guys as a coaching staff may need to improve because your team failed in doing X, Y, or Z. Right. And I think by understanding this coaching the coach concept, it just helps us as professionals, as facilitators, mentors, and so forth, in really coming together as one. And it doesn't matter what the sport is, because we all have these great ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, we did this. I was just saying, it reminds me, so we worked with a bunch of like NFL guys, and I got a chance one day to talk to the NFL coach who was coaching them, plus a bunch of other people, and they were talking about the same thing. When you assume that the general curriculum or, you know, game plan will work for everyone, you're wrong, especially the professional athletes. Like if you line up 10 guys, you say, hey, this is going to work. When you fail to realize that one guy can stretch his arms out, you know, 10 feet to keep someone away, that you didn't bother doing an assessment of attributes. So this guy has this ability. Wow, we can use this for this. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Doing that assessment of attributes, because it may be a negative attribute. Like, we really have to work on this one. He holds himself up with this technique or this power, but he has a weakness there. And right there for fighters is a difficulty, teaching people who are in their mind sometimes unstoppable, showing them a little window where someone can get in and stop them. So it's having that, if you're a fighter out there listening to this, your strength is in finding your own weaknesses. You know that SWOT idea.
Yeah.
So knowing your strengths and weaknesses at that point, that's so important. And I like starting with strengths because it's empowering. And weaknesses, you go right below it, like, whoa, this won't be as powerful if this is if someone uses a technique against, you know, my weakness, whatever it may be. And their weaknesses are there for everyone. The toughest fighters in the world, something is there. It just takes the person to get in, to figure it out.
Yes, so, learn an exploitation.
Exploit that little gap there. So yeah, and you're not, and I wanted to talk to you about generalized coaching, which I do. I say, hey, these are general principles. I'm talking to 30 people. And then we go to, hey, it's just you and me. It's a one-on-one coaching. Those are two separate,
Absolutely.
two separate game plans.
So I wanted to move on only because, one, because of time, but two, because I think it's really critical. I think I spoke to you on the phone about this, why we do this show. One, student athletes are on a serious decline in America.
Mm-hmm.
Referees are on a serious decline in America across the board with all sports. Coaches are on a decline in America as well. And a lot of it, if not most of it or all of it, has to do with parents and adults surrounding their kids and manipulating the initiatives, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, while some communities have really depleted their youth sport programs, others are basically going from the ground up and rejuvenating them or giving birth to completely new ones. Lacrosse is one of those sports that's just growing rapidly across the country. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu out of nowhere just blossomed in the United States, out of nowhere. But you did something, and I don't know how many people realize it, to the point I don't even know if you realize it. You arguably could be, you had Lloyd Irving and some of the other guys in Philadelphia, but you created basically an entire community around you, and you grew that community somehow or another. How many students do you think?
Honestly.
What's that?
It was not intentional. My goal wasn't to create a community. I feel like I'm lucky. I'm surrounded by like-minded, cool people, in that regard. That's selfish because I didn't want to deal with headaches and bad attitudes and things like that, man. That's,
But I guess, have you ever sat back and asked yourself, like, truly reflect? Did that opportunity of self-reflection say, you know what? I do have these people by my side, and now I want to know how I did it.
Yeah. No.
Nah, never.
Not yet. Not yet.
Never.
Yeah,
Well,
I haven't feel like I've done anything, so that's the thing.
Well,
So
how many students do you think you have currently right now
in Philadelphia?
Throughout your entire system that you are in?
20, 30,000 people in the network, something like that.
How many?
Like 20, 30,000 people in the whole network.
20 or 30,000 people that really you and your brother are probably 80% behind the initial build of?
Well, we were the first ones to train. That's really all we have. And then under us, students and black belts, and then people that got on board with the system. So yeah, it's crazy.
So would you say that
going
one of the
through
biggest
emails right now? So I give you a real number. I think it's like close to 20,000.
Right.
But when you talk about people on our networks, then there's 20, 30. Like I have an email list. Now it probably has a lot less. I haven't been sending out. I did the Jiu-Jitsu Matrix. Probably people have changed email. So what we're doing, we're scrubbing the lists. So I don't know. We'll know in a couple of days. This is literally what we're doing right now. We're cleaning up the email list and all that sort of stuff for Team Balance 2020. So we're going to be focused a little bit more on teamwork around the world because we're picking up so many international schools. So
right. So would you say, because I never saw it, and so I got to ask, you never holler at your students. I've never seen you raise your voice in your life. Although coaches, depending on the sport, you see it quite a bit. You see it in basketball, you see it in football, you see it in soccer. You see coaches going ape nonsense on students. But you've never done that. You've created almost a family style environment where it's not just, hey, come into my studio and learn how to grapple.
Right.
You've done. Say again.
At first, it's learn how to defend yourself, right? So we all do that. We all roll, and it just builds into this different thing. And
Hmm.
just, like I said, we modeled this after how we grew up. So you don't have to bow to us. You don't have to, no sir, master, none of that. Not that it's wrong. It's just not the culture of balance. Some other schools do it, and that's fine. If that's their culture, that's how they came up. They should continue that. It's just not how we came up. And I said the other day, like, I never had to call Elio Gracie or Helson Gracie Grandmaster and bow in and get on my knees and kiss the floor and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
They said my name is Helson, and I said, hi, Helson. I always felt weird calling, especially Elio Gracie. I never, said yes sir, no sir. That's what I said. Even though I didn't have to, I did.
Sure. Sure.
And then Helson, I know him a lot differently, so it's Helson.
Hmm.
For me, but a lot of people, it's not.
But with that relationship, though, that you had with these individuals, that came, so you learned to create, you learned that culture, that mindset, that relationship building through them, and you passed it down into yourself and how you do things.
Yeah, it wasn't too far off from how I grew up. I was just saying, Helson he's the most polite, nice, gentlemanly person, and that's how we grew up. We grew up around that, there was no one that was out of hand or wasn't saying goodbye to everybody in the room before they left, or just little things.
Right.
Part of what we do at the school, we play like a little game, basically. It's like introduce yourself before the other person can introduce themselves. That right there builds a better team. Because if you know who you're rolling with, you're less likely to go be aggressive and break their arm, More people get hurt not knowing each other or not knowing the person they're rolling with,
Yep.
So that's just one little tidbit I like.
Yeah. And you've done a lot even outside of your own studio. Your relationship with your students is not strictly as, hey, I'm your instructor, you come into my studio, definitely. I teach you, you walk away, and I'm out of your life. I live around one of my studios. Say that again?
I live around one of my studios, the one I'm in right now. I see my students all the time, everywhere. Right. Hi, and then we were just saying, I was talking with one of my guys. He was like, you're really no different than you are on the mat, or the way you are. And I'm like, this is not there's a lot of faking it on the internet, but I also think there's also, you can't fake it. You will be found out if I was out drinking, doing drugs and partying and doing all this stuff, and I'm telling people, don't do drugs, don't do,
right.
You'll be found, someone will have their phone, be like, look at Phil, he's all drunk, walking on stilts.
Yeah. you have to be genuine. But I do think that's what made you, in part at least, so successful in building your tribe. You didn't build your tribe from the inside out. It was also an outside in approach equally, meaning, yes, you had your specialty and the practice that you created, that you worked with. I'm not going to say you created Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but your school. Yeah, you did.
Nobody did. Even Elio Gracie just modified it to the point that he could do it.
Right. But my point is, you created your studio, you created your school, but you didn't just do it from the playing field, if you will, from the studio. You actually were part of the community just as much, if not possibly even more so, than you were part of the studio itself. Meaning you were constantly reaching out by being out. And I think a lot of coaches today go into their coaching bubble and never take off that coaching hat. They never leave themselves off the playing field, where if you really want to build your tribe, quote unquote, you want to build your team, you want to build your community that supports your initiatives as a coach, you need to be out with the community. You need to be part of the community.
Right.
And people need to see you. It's part of the hope and trust concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm thinking about it too, because it got so big now that it's very hard to be at everything all the time. It's impossible.
Right.
I have the luxury of my brother's in the same business. Like you say, a tournament, right? I've gone to one, he had to go to another that were on the same day. That's just how big jiu-jitsu is getting. And
Sure.
he picked up this weekend for me. I was with my daughter who was sick, you know. Thank God he was there coaching to, man, and everyone out there, fight to win. These guys won the whole thing. It was almost one of our guys in each of the fights was a balanced fighter. And, you know, I'm sorry I missed it, but high win rate, you know, and some guys went with like superstars and went like that with them. So it's cool.
Yeah.
To see
Totally
that. But
cool.
I hear what you're saying. You have to be out there. And what's cool about this, I'm sitting in my office and I'm out there with you right now talking about it too. So, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not just about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for you.
Yeah.
I know you are a huge supporter and fan of yoga.
Mm-hmm.
You created, I guess you could say you created your own little school, if you will. It's called what? Yoga for Fighters.
Yoga for Fighters. Yeah. It was just, I broke down what I knew from when like I said, I started at 8. I've worked with a lot of different people. I've worked with myself at different periods of my life through injuries and such. And I just put together the most important postures in a particular order for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA. That's all I did, just to start with, just to be able to like get in and then go to a regular class like everyone else. And that's what that was. But that thing hit big. That was bigger than my studios.
And I was just about to say, I have to assume you had a lot of non-Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners coming in to learn it.
I linked up with professional baseball, basketball, professional fighters, super CEOs. Like I met some amazing people through that because it hit the world so big. I mean, thousands and thousands of copies, and even today it still sells, but it's an app form right now, which we're modifying. That's my next meeting, how to make it a little bit more interactive on an app form. So but it's literally the same exact sequence as 2002.
Right. So you're a risk taker, because I think that takes a lot of guts. As somebody who people say, oh, well, he's a BJJ guy, he must be some grandmaster badass, to all of a sudden, hey, come on and hang out with yoga guys. Because let's be honest, for years there was a big stigma. If you were a male,
I lived the whole life. Someone on
like,
a podcast was like making a joke, like, oh, yoga, it's a bunch of girls in tights, like, hey, Phil, like that sort of thing. I was like, dude, we're on a jiu-jitsu podcast where men wrestle with other men in pajamas. Come on.
Right. It is interesting because, like, and granted, right, wrong, or indifferent, I don't care what people think about him, but like Diamond Dallas Page, who was the former professional wrestler in the WWF, he created was it DDP yoga,
It was the best thing for me.
Well, let me tell you something.
Yeah.
When you see a guy like him, and then Jake the Snake Roberts and all these other WWF guys promoting it, you're like, but why are they promoting it? And then you start looking at some of the videos, and there was an Army guy who, I think he was in a parachute accident, broke his back, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, like, he starts running again. He hasn't ever been able to run. And people are like, this is all crap. This is all nonsense.
Yeah.
I will say firsthand, after my helicopter crash in 2008 in Afghanistan, one of the things within, I think, about a year and a half, I started doing yoga. Specifically, I did Diamond Dallas Page's yoga because he and I started communicating, and he gave me free copies just to try it. And I will tell you, it did a lot. And I don't even know how it really works, other than the basic physiology of human dynamics in the body and blah, blah, blah.
Think about it first. Don't try to break it down. I always tell people, don't try to break it down yet. Do it first.
Yeah.
Just do it. Just let it be the mysterious thing that you're doing for a little bit, especially if you're an expert that likes to figure stuff out outside of your field. Just do it first. Just let it unfold. Everybody tries to figure out why and how. And
Right.
that's why I say just do it. If it makes you feel good, if it gets you on the mat. I had this conversation with one of my black belts the other day. I was moving with them. Like I said, I'm going to be 44. They are 20-something years old, badass. How am I able to like keep up with them and get them in moves sometimes? You know, that's what he wanted to know. He was like, man, I got to do yoga. Because he's like, I think about my hips and I think about that step over where it doesn't feel like, Phil, I really don't. I never thought about it. I don't think about certain things. So if you're not thinking about like unhinging your hip, hooking and doing something, you're just thinking about the kill, trying to get the choke.
Yeah.
So your legs are doing one thing and your hands are doing the other thing around someone's neck. So I never thought about it like that way. And the other thing is the breathing and stamina that, you know, a good yoga practice will give you. I don't get tired on the mat. I can go for a long time because my yoga practice is an hour and a half of nonstop movement, controlled movement. And I've been doing it forever. So I don't know. I mean, you can get me tired, of course, with other things, but you know, and it's also some like a martial art that I've been doing for 30 something years. So I can predict a lot of what's going on. There's another thing, you know, it got me thinking.
I think that should be your next endeavor.
What's that?
You do classes on strict breathing control.
Yeah,
Because that's going. I'm telling you, people don't realize that that's going to be a hot item real soon. Like, you know how everything becomes a fad in America. You had the cycling, you had Pilates, Pyo now is the big thing. Yoga is still around. You know, I guarantee you're going to start seeing studios where people physically learn how to breathe again.
Yeah, there are. I mean, and it's, if you look in a yoga studio, you'll see like classes, pranayama classes. So you'll see this breathing techniques. And so generally the yoga poses, like if you really look back, the yoga poses were created for two reasons. This is incredible. First one was to be able to sit in a meditative pose, which is also breathing and, you know, pausing and being in a pose for duration of time. So if your legs are tight, it's hard to breathe when your legs are tight. You're like always fidgeting around, your hips hurt you, you're twisting, something hurts. Instead of just being able to sit up straight, to keep your eyes in one place, if your eyes are open, and focusing 100% on I am breathing in, I am breathing out. That's one meditation, the I am. Part two, combat yoga. There's more evidence pointing to the yoga poses being like created and modified for wrestling, you know, huge combat in India, than meditation or just being a yogi. Like, what is a yogi? Just someone who, what is it? You know, is there a purpose behind it to be more aware or whatever it may be? But like, there's a book, if you ever want to look into it, the yoga tradition in the Mysore Palace. Amazing book. I was actually there when it was getting written. I was in Mysore, India, when the writer was down there doing stuff, taking pictures and talking to me a little bit about it, because like, what do you do? Like, one of the yoga people said, you're a fight, you do. And I was wrestling with the wrestling team down in India. And it was told to me like, yeah, there's more evidence pointing to the origin of posture from wrestling and combat over meditative endeavors. More postures. Like if they're a head, like what do you need a headstand for a meditative sitting up breathing pose? You know, you need neck bridges, take someone down, flip over them, you know. Interesting, man. It's a cool book. It has great like old photos and art, you know, historic pieces of yoga.
You have quite a few professional athletes that have embraced your yoga as well. It's not, you're not just dealing with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for professional athletes that are working it in the off season or what have you. I mean, you have a lot of guys, if I'm not mistaken, that in fact, I believe you probably have more professional athletes doing the yoga than you do the BJJ.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So my thing for coaches,
a lot of them refuse.
What's that?
A lot of them, a few of them refuse to ever train jiu-jitsu.
Right. Yeah. Well, you can't blame them. I mean, to a degree.
It scares them. Because I work with Bernard Hopkins. He's a friend of ours.
Yep.
I worked with him, last three of his fights. And I'm like, you ready for jiu-jitsu next? He's like, no, 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 no.
but
Don't
this
have
is
anything to do with the floor or anything. He did his thing.
right. But this is my point, and I'm talking to every coach that's out there. I don't care what the sport is.
Mm-hmm.
Do not be afraid to incorporate even like when you do warm-ups, and you're stretching and so forth. I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing just 10 minutes, of some yoga practice.
Yeah.
Bring somebody in who knows what they're doing, and incorporate some yoga, either pre-practice, warm-up, or post-practice warm-up. It's healthy, and you'd be surprised what types of barriers you could break within specifically a student athlete with their cognitive prejudice and bias in yoga, and understanding, hey, this makes actual sense, and yet I have no understanding as to why it makes sense.
Yeah.
It just does.
Yeah. It's anytime I pull it into my class, people are always like, man, I have to do more of that. I'm like, there are classes everywhere. They're like, no, we want to do it before class. They don't want to commit to this whole hour class. They just want to do a little bit. And I'm a big proponent of home practice or self-practice, rolling out a mat, doing it yourself. I've always done that. I was a little kid. I was doing that. Ashtanga yoga, which is what I do, is that. There's only, there are set systems, memorized systems, and you can roll out a mat anywhere on the planet, and just, even if you're facing a wall, you can do your practice,
Yeah.
I think yoga as a physically, like a method to improve your physicality is huge. And then it'll trickle into your brain as well, and how you think and how you recover.
Absolutely.
If you're sleeping better, you're recovering better, and you can, like, people don't understand why they start getting like stronger and stronger, because you're able to rest. The recovery phase is improved. And if recovery is improved, your muscles will grow, your things will repair, and things like that. But we never think of it like that.
Sure. Hey, we're coming up on time, and just if people wanted to get a hold of you, people wanted to follow you, what are some of the ways that people could do just that?
You can look me up on Facebook. You'll see my name, Phil Migliarese. You'll find me. Follow there. I am at Jiu-Jitsu Matrix on Instagram and Twitter. So I'm more on Instagram than I am Twitter these days, and a little bit more on Facebook as social means. I kind of pulled back all my social stuff. I will be pulling back in. My brother, he is at Animal Black Belt on Instagram. He's really good moves. And my cousins, I have all these wild people in my life. Beast Black Belt. My cousin Frank Ambrifi. He's his nickname was the Beast growing up. My brother was the Animal growing up, unrelated. So
and it stuck with them forever.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the things that we do with this show, by the way, is with our guests, and some of them have no affiliation whatsoever, but they're huge supporters of, and blah blah blah. But we love giving shout outs. We think it's critical. Specifically, that coaches are involved in things that are far above and beyond their own sport. They're involved in things that better the lives of others beyond just sport. And therefore, we're big supporters in the nonprofit organizations. We like giving exposure to them. Our show is actually sponsored by what's called the Second Mission Foundation. It's a veteran nonprofit that helps veterans transition into the civilian life. And this show really tries to make an emphasis. We'd like to see more veterans transition into the coaching world or referee world, because we know there's a decline in it. And we think veterans have such amazing stories through their lives as military members that they could put a huge impact on a child's life. So with that, we're with Second Mission Foundation. Do you have any specific organizations that you're a big fan of that you want us to?
We're a part of a bunch in Philadelphia, so they're all pretty much local. I'm excited to work with you and that organization. So we're coming up on Christmas time, so we'll be doing an event for CHOP, Children's Hospital, to raise some funds, and we do it right here in the studio. People give their time and effort, to raise some funds for Christmas time. So that's just the next one that's coming up.
Yeah.
And like I said, we do a lot of fundraising, and we have a lot of great instructors that'll just throw their time for free, build some funds, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is absolutely critical.
Oh, yeah.
Let's be honest with one. At the end of the day, we're getting older, and we're not going to be here forever. It's a reality, but we should be leaving some type of legacy for those that are going to follow in our footsteps or follow it in similar footsteps. Yeah. And the more that we could do for those that are maybe half our age, the better off our society is going to be. And that's what it's all about. Ladies and gentlemen, Phil Migliarese was our guest today. Just a spectacular guy. Phil, I can't thank you enough, man.
No problem. No problem. We'll do it again soon.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Coach and the Coach. By the way, don't forget, check out our sponsor, zbones.io/coach. Go get yourself a set of bone phones, because putting those earphones inside your ear creates earwax. If you get tetanus, it's going to mess up your ears even worse. Go get yourself a set of zbones, zbones.io/coach. Brought to you in part by the Second Mission Foundation.